You ever notice how sometimes when a person begins to care so much about you, they suddenly pull back? They don't call as much anymore. They are distant, almost cold. And your first reaction is, what did I do wrong? You replay every second, every sentence, trying to pinpoint the switch that flipped. But what if I told you that pullback isn't rejection? It's fear. It's the heart's response. I want to love you, but I don't know how to be safe doing it. See, the paradox of the avoidant is this: they push away what they crave the most. They crave connection, crave intimacy, they crave love that feels safe, but deep inside, there's a part of them that whispers, don't get too close, you'll lose yourself, you'll get hurt again. So instead of leaning in, they step back, they build a wall not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much. Most view avoidance as coldness or lack of feeling. The truth is, it's usually born of overload of emotions. They're individuals who've known closeness to be chaos, who've learned love to equal pain at times. Perhaps they came from a home where loving was an unpredictable thing, warm one day, gone the next day. Perhaps they were betrayed, abandoned, or made to feel like their needs were too much. Their nervous system came to understand over time that the safest location isn't in relation, it's in absence of it. So when you begin to notice that avoidant behavior, when they back away, when they distance themselves, when they pretend not to care, it's easy to take it personally. But I want you to notice it for what it actually is: a defense mechanism, a coping mechanism. It's their way of saying, I want this to work, but I don't know how to deal with what I'm feeling at the moment. Picture someone who has been burned by flames. When they see a flame, no matter how small and gentle it is to warm them up, they recoil. That recoil is not a rejection of the warmth of the fire, it's a recollection of the pain. Avoidants do the same thing with their emotions. They love, but that love awakens past terrors. They crave connection, but that craving brings loss to mind. So they run, not because they don't care, because they care more deeply than they know how to manage. And here's the truth: the moment an avoidant starts acting distant, it's often the moment they're most vulnerable. It's the moment they're internally begging, please don't see me as broken. Please don't leave me because I'm scared. The tragedy is, they can't say those words. Their fear won't let them. So instead, they do the opposite. They build walls. They pretend to be indifferent. But don't be fooled. Their silence is not emptiness. It is protection. Their distance is not detachment. It is defense. When you realize this paradox, everything shifts. Rather than reacting to their distance with panic or frustration, you start to see the wind beneath. You know it's not about you. It's about them trying to survive their own narrative, and how to fulfill that isn't to pursue or to rescue or to demonstrate your love. How to fulfill it is to look at them without judgment, to stand on your own in love, to say silently, you're safe with me. I'm not leaving. I won't lose myself in trying to draw you near, because love that stems from fear can't cure. But love that stems from awareness, that's where the change starts. When an avoidant responds as if they don't care, what they're actually doing is exposing you to their most vulnerable wound. And if you can look beyond the behavior, if you can look at the human being behind, the one who's afraid to be caught, you offer them the very thing they've been avoiding but yearning for all along: a safe place to belong. When you realize that hiding isn't about rejection, you begin to see the truth masked behind it. Hiding is not a character defect. It's a defense. It's not a personality defect. It's emotional armor. Every one of us wears some kind of armor. We build it through experiences, through pain, through the moments when life told us it's not safe to be vulnerable. For the avoidant, armor is distance, it's control, it's detachment, not because they want to hurt anyone, but because somewhere deep inside they learned that connection equals danger. Consider this: no infant enters the world fearing love. An infant reaches out involuntarily, screaming for touch, for proximity, for heat. Avoidance is a learned behavior, tactic that dictates, if I can't depend on others, I'll depend only on myself. And somewhere along the line in their life, that tactic worked. It protected them. It kept them alive. That which keeps you secure as a child can undermine you when you are grown. The same wall that used to safeguard you is now the cage that excludes love. And that's the tragedy of avoidance. It's self-preservation that ultimately leads to the very loneliness they fear. Now, I want you to actually consider this. Behind every avoidant behavior, behind the distance, the silence, the control, there's a history. Perhaps it's a history of inconsistency, where love arrived and departed like the weather. Perhaps it's a history of betrayal, where someone they most trusted abandoned them. Or perhaps it's a history of shame where they were taught that requiring someone made them weak. So when an avoidant pulls back, when they start to shut down emotionally, what they're really saying is, I don't know how to be close and safe at the same time. It's not that they don't want love, they just don't trust it yet. They don't trust that it won't disappear. They don't trust that if they open up, they won't get hurt again. And if you've ever experienced the other side of it, you know how hurtful it is. You're loving someone who has one foot in and one foot out. One day they're warm and affectionate. The next day they're cold and aloof. It feels weird. It feels personal. But here's the change. It's not personal, it's patterned. When you're able to realize that avoidance is a pattern rooted in fear, not rejection of love, you cease taking it as a judgment against your value. You begin to realize that this person isn't attempting to punish you, she's attempting to shield herself. Avoidance is her language of fear, not indifference. Now, that doesn't imply you put up with being treated poorly or emotionally starved. Understanding is not the same as enabling. What it suggests is that you come from a place of compassion and not desperation. You cease attempting to fix them and begin seeing them instead, because being seen and judged not, that's what starts to dissolve the armor, and that's the magic when you no longer react to the avoiding. When you remain calm, centered, and empathetic, you become something they've never known, safe connection. You're demonstrating to them, not verbally, but through energy, that love doesn't have to hurt. That intimacy doesn't have to equal control. That vulnerability isn't weakness, it's power. When an avoidant begins to feel that safety, their nervous system unwinds. Walls they've spent a decade or more constructing start to collapse. And in that moment, you don't simply help them heal, you remind them of something they've forgotten. That love isn't meant to be survival, it's meant to be sanctuary. Avoidance isn't a flaw then, avoidance is a fear response, but awareness is the key that unlocks that fear, and when awareness encounters love, that's when change starts. There is a point in every relationship where things begin to get sketchy, where feelings escalate, tension accumulates, and before you know it, open person that once was becomes silent. You reach out to them and they don't answer. You ask them what the matter is and they reply, I'm fine. But you can sense it, something is different. That's the emotional shutdown, and it's not apathy, it's not lack of concern, it's a cry for stability and silence. See, when an avoidant becomes shut down, it's their nervous system slamming on the brakes. Survival mechanism, their body is telling them, this is too much, I need to feel safe again before I can connect. Maybe on the outside it appears cold, but inside there's chaos. Their mind is racing, heart is guarded, and every instinct is screaming at them to run to safety. We all have fight, flight, or freeze reaction. Avoidance, the freeze, usually takes over. They do not explode, they vanish. They do not argue, they retreat. It is not that they do not feel, it is that their feelings are just too overwhelming, too powerful. It's their emotional self-protection. Now here's the thing, when an avoidant individual falls silent, that silence is not them surrendering, it's them refocusing. They're gathering their strength. They can come meet you again in tranquility. It's a time when what they're needing most isn't pressure, it's presence. Not questioning, but comprehension. But what do we generally do? We freak out. We pursue. We text again. We call again. We tell you ignoring me. And by doing that, even though it is out of love, we reinforce their greatest fear. If I allow someone in, I'll be smothered. I'll lose control. The more you push, the further they pull away. I've seen this pattern again and again in relationships, friendships, even in business partnerships. One person shuts down out of fear, the other panics out of insecurity, and suddenly both are dancing around each other's pain instead of seeing the truth underneath it. So what's the truth? The truth is that emotional shutdown isn't rejection, it's regulation. It's the body letting go and saying, I can't process this right now, but I still care. When you can see that, when you can look past the behavior and see the fear that's driving it, everything changes. The way to meet emotional shutdown isn't to demand connection, it's to offer safety. It's to say, in your energy, I'm here when you're ready, you're allowed to take your time, because that's what stability feels like. It's steady, it doesn't chase, it doesn't punish, doesn't guilt trip. It holds space. And let me tell you, holding space is not passive. It's powerful. It takes emotional strength. It takes you to manage your own fear while they're managing theirs. It means not falling into your own insecurity when they pull away, but holding firm in who you are. Because when you do that, you model something remarkable. You model emotional safety. When an avoidant feels safe, they gradually come to trust again. They learn that silence doesn't mean abandonment, that they can take space without losing a connection. And that is when the walls begin to fall. That is when deep intimacy can start to develop, not the one that results from perpetual closeness, but the one that's established through solid, respectful space. So the next time you feel that shutdown, don't interpret it as a wall between you and them. Interpret it as a pause, a moment of recalibration. Because in the silence, they're not asking you to repair them. They're asking you not to leave. They're asking you to remain steady, to occupy the emotional space that they can't occupy yet. When you can do that, when you can respond to silence with peacefulness, to fear with comprehension, and to distance with love, you become the anchor in their storm. And that's when connection ceases to be fragile and becomes powerful. Because love isn't demonstrated through chasing, it's demonstrated through remaining steady when all the rest yanks away. That's when an avoidant figures out that love doesn't have to be crazy, it can finally be safe. Love is the cure for fear, but it must be grounded, it must be steady, anchored, and based on truth. Because love without grounding becomes chasing, and chasing becomes chaos. You can't battle fear with fear. And then when someone with avoidant tendencies begins to withdraw, that's precisely what occurs. They feel afraid and you feel afraid as well. They withdraw so they feel secure. You close the gap so you feel comforted. Now, two people who love each other are no longer dancing together. They're responding to each other's hurt. Now, here's something about love that lasts. It's not passion, it's presence. It's not intensity, it's consistency. You can't meet avoidance with panic, you meet it with peace. Because fear feeds off chaos, but it cannot live in calm. When you love someone who has trouble with closeness, your strength is not in demonstrating your love, it's in living it, it's in remaining grounded even when they cannot. You demonstrate to them through your stability that love doesn't have to be a tempest. It can be a shoreline, it can be calm water. That's what I mean by grounded love. It's love that is smart enough to hold both truth and tenderness simultaneously. It says, I care about you, but I won't lose myself to keep you. It says, I'll give you room, but I'll also leave my door open. It's not letting go or surrendering. It's giving clarity. Many people mix up love with sacrifice. They believe that love is running after someone so that they can feel secure, but that's not love. That's fear dressed up as love. Real love doesn't invade, it invites. Real love doesn't pressure, it empowers. And solid ground love, authentic awake love, has the distinction. So when the avoidant in your life begins to pull away, breathe. Don't take the hook of panic. Remember, this is their fear talking, not their reality. If you respond out of your own fear, you fuel the fire. But if you respond out of peace, you are the fire's extinguisher. You can tell yourself, I see what's going on, I feel afraid too, but I'm choosing to ground myself. Because when you ground yourself, you change the energy of the whole dynamic. They're anticipating pressure, they're anticipating pursuit, they're anticipating the emotional tantrum. And when it does not arrive, they start to feel safe. Fear and love can't exist within the same space. One always breaks the other down. Fear closes down, love opens up. Fear conceals, love reveals. Fear is get out of here, love is present. And that is why earth love is so strong. It doesn't combat the fear, it changes it. But let's be clear, grounded love is not passive. It is not waiting eternally for someone to heal. It is an active place of strength and compassion. It is choosing to keep your boundaries with kindness, to speak your truth without blame, to stay open without losing your center. That's love leadership. That's mastery of the emotions. You're not being controlled by fear, you're leading from alignment. And when you do that, you make room for the other person to step up into the same place of emotional maturity, because love that chases can't heal fear, it only amplifies it. But love that stands firm says, I see your fear and I'm not afraid of it. That's what breaks the pattern. That's what builds trust. When love is rooted, it's medicine. It doesn't save, it heals. It doesn't command, it shows. And the message it conveys is strong. You are safe to be loved and you are safe to love. So remember, when fear creeps up in your relationships, don't battle it. Anchor yourself deeper. Breathe. Lead with peace, because the more rooted your love gets, the less space there is for fear to take over. And in the quiet, that stability, stillness, connection can begin to flower. Each relationship has a rhythm, a dance, and for so many people, particularly when fear and attachment meet, that dance turns into a hurt cycle. One advances, the other recedes. One pursues intimacy, the other retreats for security, and the farther one goes, the farther the other tries to get. It's not love that's broken, it's the pattern that is. You've likely experienced this before. 1 minute, you're feeling close. The next, you're questioning why they've become remote. You become anxious, insecure, perhaps even desperate for reassurance. You move closer. You text, you call, you ask questions. And in place of bringing them nearer, it pushes them further away. Why? Because what you're reacting to isn't them. It's your own fear of loss. And what they're reacting to isn't you. It's their fear of engulfment. Two fears colliding, two nervous systems, different languages. Let me share something with you. In every cycle of pursue and withdraw, each of you is trying to be safe. The pursuer is saying, if I can just get you to connect, I'll be safe. If I can just have room, I'll be safe. Each is seeking the same thing, peace, but going in opposite directions. And unless one of you wakes up to that pattern, it continues to repeat. What do you do then? You stop reacting and begin to respond. You slow down, you breathe, you understand that your partner's withdrawal is not a sign that they're leaving you, that they're flooding. Their system is crying out for air, not because you've done something incorrect, but because their brain is linking proximity with danger. For the avoidant, pay attention, because when someone begins pursuing you, perceive it as pressure, as losing control. You may say to yourself, I just need a minute to catch my breath, but your partner experiences that minute as rejection. So the more you withdraw, the more they panic. That's how the dance becomes a storm. Only escape is awareness, awareness of your triggers, awareness of theirs. You can't heal what you don't see. The pursuer must know that pursuing connection in times of stress annihilates the very connection they're struggling to maintain, and the avoidant must know that pulling back to feel safe tends to cause the abandonment they dread the most. When both people begin to see this dance, something amazing happens. They stop blaming and start understanding. They stop saying, you're too clingy, or you're too distant, and instead they say, this is our fear speaking. Let's breathe through it together. That's where actual intimacy starts. Because intimacy is not about being close all the time, it's about co-regulation. It's about two human beings figuring out how to remain connected even when it gets difficult. It's about understanding when to hold space and when to bridge the gap without fear being in charge. So if you are the one who tends to chase, here's your growth edge. You slow down. Breathe, center yourself before you reach out. Ask, am I asking for reassurance or am I giving connection? If it's reassurance, wait until you can show up from love, not panic. And if you're the withdrawal type, your growth edge is this: remain present. Be verbal even when it feels awkward. Tell your partner, I need space, but I'm not leaving. Those 3 words can make all the difference. Because it conveys to your partner, I still care. I just need to regulate. Breaking the cycle isn't about changing who you are. It's about learning to lead with awareness rather than fear. It's about establishing a new dance where both individuals can move freely, understanding neither must chase nor conceal themselves in order to be safe. That's the kind of love that heals. That's the kind of love that rewrites patterns, not repeats them. Because when both people wake up, when both can see the dance, they finally cease trampling on each other's pain and begin to move in rhythm again. And that rhythm, that reciprocal consciousness, that's where connection turns into freedom. That's when love doesn't have to be a battlefield anymore, but a sanctuary. When an avoidant retreats, your response determines the fate of the connection. That instant there, when the panic kicks in, the silence prolongs, space widens. That's the instant that decides whether you continue the same pattern or rewrite it. Because the power is not in what they do, it's in how you react. This is what I call the power of non-reactivity. It's not about suppressing your feelings or pretending you don't care. It's about mastering your state. It's about choosing presence over panic, clarity over chaos, peace over pursuit. See, most folks believe that love is all about what you can do for the other person, but real love starts with taking care of your own energy. When somebody pulls away, when they shut down, it activates every layer of you that's terrified of abandonment. That old wound stirs up and shouts, do something, fix it. Don't let them go. And thus we respond, we text, we demand, we clarify, we pursue closure like it's air. But the reality is this: whenever you respond out of fear, you perpetuate the same dynamic you're attempting to break free from, because fear speaks fear. If you freak out, you become dangerous to someone who already feels vulnerable. And now, that doesn't equate to being quiet or stifling your needs. Non-reactivity isn't numbness, it's mastery. It's taking a breath and going, I feel triggered at the moment. I don't have to do something about it. It's seeing the feeling without being the feeling. That's what emotional intelligence in the real world looks like. When you can remain peaceful when confronted with someone's withdrawal, you're giving a strong signal. I'm not here to manipulate you. I'm here to relate to you. And that signal, my friends, is healing because the avoidant person doesn't get to experience peaceful. They experience turmoil. They get to experience people reacting, pushing, proving, demanding. When they encounter someone who remains firm, diffuses the fear, it builds safety where there was tension. Consider this: love does not grow in tension. Love grows in peace. If you need someone to return emotionally, don't pull tighter, release your hold. People are attracted to where they feel unrestricted. They go back to where they feel secure, which is why non-reactivity isn't weakness, it's strength, spiritual practice. It's the art of remaining centered when every part of you wants to take control. Because the moment you can stop reacting, you begin to lead. You lead with energy. You lead with example. You're the storm of peace. And something incredible happens. Your stillness starts to regulate the entire connection. When you're calm, their nervous system feels it. Your energy becomes contagious. They start to feel that maybe closeness isn't dangerous after all. Maybe love doesn't have to be overwhelming. Maybe they can breathe again. Here's the catch: you can't be fake calm. You can't utilize silence as a form of manipulation or non-reactivity as a performance. You have to be calm, not fake being calm. That's what distinguishes pretending peace from being peace. One is a product of control, the other is a product of awareness. So the next time you catch that urge to respond, to text back, to over-clarify, require a response, stop, put your hand on your heart, take a breath. Remember, their fear does not make me less worthy. Their silence does not nullify my worth. Then respond out of love, not need. Because when you no longer react, you no longer feed the cycle. You start to teach by energy what words never can. I'm not scared of your fear. I can hold space for us both. And that's when change occurs. That's when the walls start to weaken, when trust starts to rebuild, when love starts to breathe again. The strength of non-reactivity isn't in doing less, it's in being more aware, more solid, more purposeful. It's the vibe that says, I prefer peace no matter what. And that preference, that's where you step out of repeating the past and into building something brand new. One of the largest miscommunications in relationships, particularly when you're working with someone who has avoidant tendencies, is how they show love, because their love language isn't necessarily words or touch or clinginess. Their love language is frequently space. I get it, though, space. Come on. That can be the antithesis of love, but for an avoidant, space isn't rejection, it's regulation. It's how they find equilibrium within themselves. It's how they contain the intensity of their feelings. You see, when an avoidant begins to feel closeness building, it can activate profound unconscious terrors. Terror of losing control, terror of being trapped, terror of being overwhelmed by someone else's feelings. And when those terrors emerge, their nervous system acts on what it's always done to stay alive. It retreats. It's not that they want to be isolated, it's that they have to gasp for air. We exist in a culture that idealizes perpetual proximity. We're taught that if you truly love someone, they should be with you every moment. Yet love is not gauged by closeness, it's gauged by being present. And for the avoidant, being present sometimes means isolating themselves. First, it's within that private sphere that they refocus on themselves so they can refocus on you. The issue is, when that occurs, the other individual, particularly one who's needy or intensely attached, feels abandoned. They read that space as distance, that quiet as coldness, that withdrawal as disinterest. The reality is, however, that when an avoidant needs space, it's often not because they've lost interest, it's because they care so intensely it terrifies them. So what do? You respect the space, but you remain emotionally open. You don't chase and you don't shut down. You communicate with energy, not pressure. You transmit the unwritten messagey. I see you. I trust you. Take the time you need. I'm still here. And let me tell you something, that sort of energy is magnetic, because when an avoidant feels like they can have space without losing the connection, they begin to feel safe for the first time, safe to breathe, safe to come back, safe to be themselves. You see, avoidance is not because you don't feel like loving, it's because you don't trust love to be safe. When you respect their boundaries, you prove to them something they've never experienced before, that love doesn't have to smother. It can coexist with freedom. It can both have independence and intimacy at the same time. But I'm going to tell you the truth. This is hard. This is emotionally disciplined. Because when you love someone who requires space, you must learn to contain your own triggers. You must learn to comfort your fear of abandonment while they comfort their fear of proximity. That is what conscious love is all about. each partner learning to hold themselves so that they can hold each other. And now, this does not mean you accept emotional neglect. It's not about being okay with breadcrumbs or constant withdrawal. It's about knowing how to tell when someone is taking space to process and when someone is shying away from responsibility altogether. The one heals, the other breaks hearts. You have to know the difference. But when it is real, when that space is a moment of recalibration, respecting it can be one of the strongest things you can do. Because what you're communicating energetically is, I don't have to pursue you in order to be worthy. I don't have to cling in order to be connected. I trust the connection that we're forming. And that trust, spoken or unspoken, is everything. That's what dissolves resistance. That's what makes avoidance approach. Because when love offers freedom instead of fear, people cease running away from it and begin running towards it. So if their love language is space, don't battle it. Learn to flow with it. Make space the bridge, not the barrier. Because when both of you feel safe to breathe, that's when love actually starts to grow. There's always a moment in each relationship, particularly when you're loving someone with avoidant tendencies, where your heart just wants to save them. You see their fear, you see their hurt, you see the way they shut down not because they don't love you, but because they're afraid. And something within you whispers, if I just love them harder, if I just demonstrate to them they're safe, perhaps they'll finally open up. But here's the truth, you can't save someone from his or her own head. You can't heal what he or she isn't ready to do the work on. Love may be able to bring about healing, but it can't do the work. And the second you begin attempting to save someone, you shift from connection into control. See, rescuing comes from a beautiful place. It comes from empathy, from compassion, from a desire to ease someone's suffering. But at its core, rescuing says, you can't handle this, let me do it for you. And that message, though unintentional, feeds their fear. It reinforces the belief that closeness means losing autonomy. That love means being consumed. Empowerment, alternatively, states you are strong, you can do it. I believe in your ability to overcome your fears. It's the difference between holding someone and carrying them. If you've ever attempted to repair someone's emotional state, you know it never lasts. Because what does happen? You exhaust yourself. You try to give and give, hoping your effort will make them feel secure. But all that energy builds up pressure, and pressure magnifies fear. The more you attempt to coax them out of their shell, the further they go in. Empowerment turns all that around. When you empower, you cease trying to control their emotions and begin controlling your own. You take a stand and say, I'm here for you. I also trust you to manage your own growth. That's love based on respect, not fear. And that's precisely what an avoidant individual needs to feel. Because most avoidants don't trust love, not because they've never experienced it, but because love has always been something that felt like control. When you demonstrate to them that love can exist alongside freedom, when you cease rescuing and begin empowering, you rewrite their narrative concerning connection. Imagine it this way: if a person is learning to swim, you can't keep holding them up forever. If you do, they'll never have confidence in the water or themselves. But if you remain alongside them, urging, soothing, steady, and sure, they begin to have confidence in their own ability. Ultimately, they release your hand, not to swim off, but to swim alongside you. That is what empowerment accomplishes in love. It fosters trust without dependence. It welcomes closeness without constraint. It enables both individuals to develop separately and as a couple. Now, here is the test. In order to empower, you must release control. You must endure discomfort. You must let them fail without rushing over to correct it. And that's difficult, because love causes us to want to shield. But there are times that protection turns into incarceration. There are times that the greatest act of love is to move out of the way and allow the other individual to emerge. So the next time that urge strikes, to over-explain, to over-give, to over-console, stop. Ask yourself, am I enabling them to grow, or am I seeking to control their fear so I don't have to deal with mine? Because that's the real truth people don't want to hear. Rescuing tends to comfort our own anxiety more than it fixes theirs. Real love gives power. It doesn't say, I need you to be okay. It says, you've got this, and I'm right here with you. And when you carry that energy, when your love speaks, I believe in you, rather than I'll save you, everything shifts. The avoidant starts to view connection as strength rather than threat. They begin to feel trusted rather than trapped. And healing really starts then, because love doesn't save. It reminds people who they are. It doesn't carry them. It calls them forward. That's not just love. That's freedom. Healing starts the day you stop taking it personally. Because Here's the thing, most of the hurt in your relationships isn't coming from what the other guy is doing, it's coming from the meaning you're giving it. You're not hurt because they pulled away, you're hurt because you created a narrative about what that distance means. They don't care. I'm not enough. I did something wrong. But what if all of that wasn't true? What if their retreat wasn't about you at all, but about them attempting to regulate their own fear? Look, when you love someone with avoidant tendencies, it's simple to take their actions personally. Their quiet is met with rejection. Their distance is met with abandonment. But beneath those actions is a hurt nervous system, one that learned a long time ago that intimacy isn't safe. They're not attempting to hurt you, they're attempting to protect themselves. And when you can actually see that, truly see it, you reclaim your peace because you see that their response isn't a definition of your worth. Their fear isn't a reflection that you're not lovable. It just means they're still figuring out how to love without risking. This is where your strength resides, in divorcing your value from their wounds. The instant you make their avoidance personal, you give them control of your emotions. You make their actions the reflection of your worth. But when you quit making it personal, you reclaim your power. You begin to react from love rather than insecurity. You begin to be present, grounded rather than guarded. Let me share something with you. People can only connect with you as deeply as they've connected with themselves. So if somebody's avoiding, shutting down, or having a hard time connecting, that's the limit of their emotional capacity, not an indication of your desirability or your value. When you take it personally, you get into the same fear cycle they're in. You begin chasing, over-explaining, shrinking, trying to prove yourself worthy of connection. But when you stand back and say, I see your fear, but I know who I am, everything changes. You stop needing their behavior to confirm your value. That's not detachment, emotional mastery. That's what I refer to as compassionate clarity. You care, but you see, you love, you don't lose yourself. You feel their struggle, but you remain grounded in your truth, because love without boundaries equals chaos, and compassion without self-worth equals self-abandonment. So how do you cease taking it personally? You begin by rewriting the story. Rather than telling yourself, they don't love me, you tell yourself, they're afraid of love. Rather than, I'm not enough, you tell yourself, they're still learning how to receive enough. Rather than, they're shutting me out, you tell yourself, they're overwhelmed right now. You begin to see their behavior through the eyes of compassion rather than rejection. And when you do that, the emotional charge is gone. The panic subsides. You start to respond with equanimity rather than hurt. But let's get real, it's not simple. It takes work. It takes presence. It takes learning how to contain your own fear without letting it drive the bus. Because when someone you care about withdraws, your own hurts come to the surface. That's your time to grow. That's the time to heal your own attachment, to remain grounded even when they're in chaos. Remember, their distance is a mirror, not a measure. It shows where they are, not who you are. And when you can love someone but still keep your own worth, you quit trying to get love from fear. You become love itself. And here's the magic. When you no longer take it personally, you build safety. You quit fueling the fear cycle and begin to emit acceptance. And in that vibe, the avoidant begins to soften. They feel that you're not judging them, not blaming them, not pursuing them. And that's what brings them in. Because love without owning self isn't love, it's need. But love that observes, that has compassion and power simultaneously, that's healing. Release the need to take their fear as personal responsibility. Their wounds aren't yours to bear. Your responsibility isn't to heal them. It's to recall who you are while you love them. And that's where healing starts. And that's where love is finally free. Along the way, love that stands the test isn't constructed on intensity. It's constructed on conscious connection. It's not how hard you love, how much you give, or how often you grip. It's about how deeply you know yourself and the other. Because true love isn't discovered in the tumult of emotion. It's forged in the precision of awareness. Conscious connection is being awake in your relationships. You're not responding out of reaction. You're responding. You're not attempting to fix someone. You're figuring out how to meet them in their place without compromising where you are. It's love that's not birthed out of fear, but out of choice. See, people fall in love subconsciously. They act out patterns. They reenact the scripts they grew up with. They act out the same roles: chaser, fixer, avoider, pleaser, hoping this time it'll be safe at last. But love doesn't change by happenstance. It changes by becoming conscious. When you can gaze at your lover and say, I see your pattern and I see mine, and I choose to grow, not react, that's where true intimacy starts. When you're dating someone avoidant, this is all there is, because the aim isn't to get them to behave differently. It's to create a dynamic where both of you are safe enough to be present in full, where space isn't disconnection, where silence isn't punishment, where vulnerability is the bridge rather than the battle. That type of love requires emotional maturity. It requires you to be mature enough to be able to believe two things simultaneously. I love you, and I am not going to sacrifice myself for you. It's the type of love that offers this message: I'm not here to save you, I'm here to rise with you. And when both individuals commit to that sort of self-aware growth, everything changes. You quit viewing conflict as failure, you view it as feedback. You quit fleeing from discomfort, you begin employing it as a healing agent. You begin to understand that each trigger is an invitation to become stronger together. This is the evolution of love. It's not about finding the perfect person. It's about becoming the person who can love deeply without losing peace. It's about breaking the cycle of fear-based connection and replacing it with choice, trust, and truth. Because let's be real, relationships are going to dig up your oldest wounds. That is not a weakness. That's what they're meant to do. Love is a mirror reflecting back to you everything about you that is still in the dark. But if you go into that with awareness rather than blame, with curiosity rather than control, then those wounds become your best teachers. When an avoidant goes distant, it's not the end, just a chance. When you're feeling triggered, evidence you're broken, it's a call to heal. When space between you aches, that's where the magic resides. And listen, this isn't romantic love. This is about how you connect in all areas of life, because the way you love others is the way you love yourself. If you can be with compassion in the midst of fear, if you can remain grounded when someone else is closing down, you're not changing your relationship, you're changing your energy. You're becoming a sanctuary in a world that operates based on fear. That's the highest form of love, conscious love, love that doesn't bind but frees, love that doesn't demand but invites, love that doesn't rescue but empowers, love that doesn't take it personally but takes responsibility for growth. So when an avoidant keeps you at arm's length, don't interpret it as them pleading with you to go away. Interpret it as them gently whispering, can you love me without losing you? And when you can say yes to that, when your love is expansive enough to hold space, to remain centered, to remain awake, everything shifts. That's when love is no longer survival and becomes creation. That's when you both no longer run from fear and walk toward truth. Because ultimately, lasting love isn't constructed in the passion of the moment. It's constructed in the light of awareness. And when you live from that place, when you love consciously, you don't only attract love, you become it.